Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you've had a productive week, and as usual, I wish you all a restful weekend ahead. We start as we usually do with the economy. Wages for new hires in China have dropped after 2 consecutive quarters of modest growth, signaling a weakening labour market that is worsening deflation and slowing economic growth. According to data from Zhaopian Limited, average monthly salaries for new recruits in 38 major Chinese cities decreased by 0.6% in the third quarter compared to the previous year, now averaging 10,058 yuan, $1,423. This follows a slight increase of 2.2% and 0.5% in the first and second quarters respectively. These wage declines reflect broader signs of a deteriorating job market, which is discouraging consumer spending and fueling a downward spiral of falling prices and wages. This poses a significant challenge to China's goal of achieving around 5% growth in 2024. In response, the government has introduced a series of stimulus measures with expectations of further public spending, potentially including household subsidies to encourage consumption. Of course, as we know from this week, a wavering stock market is watching Beijing closely this Saturday for signs of stronger fiscal stimulus. We will have to wait for this announcement, and I will likely do a special episode on Sunday, depending on what is released on Saturday. In September, China's employment index for the non-manufacturing sector continued to fall, reaching its lowest level since December 2022, when the country experienced a surge in COVID-19 cases. The official unemployment rate hit a 6-month high in August, while youth unemployment reached a record level this year. Last year, wages for new hires experienced their longest period of decline since data tracking began in 2016. Next up for the economy, in a piece published this week, Mao Zhenhua of Renmin University's Institute of Economics said that because China's current slowdown is mainly cyclical, Beijing should respond by ignoring its debt constraints and funding a significant counter-cyclical fiscal expansion. This caused a stir online, particularly from those who have argued that the current issues facing China are more structural in nature. It has sparked a debate, and one of the stronger pushbacks came from our old friend, Professor of Finance at Peking University, Michael Pettis, who today expressed, quote, "For those who think that China's slowdown is mainly structural, a consequence of years of overinvestment driven by a refusal to accept more sustainable growth rates, but unable to replace investment with higher consumption, this is a risky strategy. The problem is that more debt to fund fiscal expansion doesn't resolve the underlying imbalances. It merely postpones for a few more years the necessary slowdown associated with the shift of resources from business and government sectors to the household sector. During this period, Chinese debt levels will continue to rise quickly as Beijing uses up the only clean balance sheet left in China to continue the kinds of activities that have left local government, state-owned enterprises, and household balance sheets overstretched and banks undercapitalized. The risk is that once China can no longer postpone the rebalancing, it will have to go through the very difficult adjustment without a government balance sheet flexible enough to help it maneuver possible economic and social disruptions. There should be no illusions about how substantial and difficult the needed structural adjustment is. If China reduces the investment share of GDP by 10 full percentage points, it will still have one of the highest investment shares of GDP in the world. And after decades of running the highest investment share of GDP in history, and massive overbuilding in property, infrastructure, and increasingly manufacturing, even that adjustment is probably far too little. Most countries, including Brazil and the USSR, have been unable to manage such a shift without serious economic and political disruptions. The one major exception, Japan, was the only one that didn't begin the process with excessive government debt levels, and it took Japan 17 years, from 1991 to 2008, to make the 10-point adjustment. Not only did Japan start with much smaller imbalances than China, but during that period, Tokyo engineered a huge build-up in debt, from 38% to 139% of GDP. Some would argue that Japan's experience doesn't matter because China today isn't Japan in 1991, and that's true, but mainly because China is poorer, its imbalances far greater, and government debt levels higher. Those are not good differences. Beijing, of course, will do whatever it decides to do, and many economists besides Mao Zhenhua are calling on it to use its balance sheet more aggressively. but historical precedent suggests that worsening the debt burden to postpone the adjustment will only make the ultimate adjustment that much more difficult." End quote. Next up, on the sidelines of an ASEAN meeting in Laos, PRC Premier Li Qiang met with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, with Beijing then agreeing to allow the import of Australian live lobsters. In the meeting, Li said China is, quote, "willing to further strengthen mutual understanding with Australia and jointly build a more mature, stable and fruitful China-Australia comprehensive strategic partnership to better benefit the two peoples and make greater contributions to regional and world peace, stability and development." End quote. The final block in a $20 billion trade embargo on Australian exports to China has now been lifted. The Australian Prime Minister finalised the agreement on yesterday morning, with the one-on-one meeting with Li. Australia's lobster exports were the last agricultural commodity to remain barred from the massive Chinese market, with the exception of two beef exporters that remain suspended for technical reasons, with the Australian lobster industry likely having suffered more than $1.85 billion in lost revenue since China introduced trade restrictions in November of 2020. This news is expected to be very positive for many of Australia's seafood exporters. Assuming the last two red meat establishments subject to China's trade restrictions also receive relief in the coming months, the eventual removal of the live lobster barriers will mean the de facto end of China's campaign of economic coercion, which has now lasted more than 4 years. Next up, we move to Taiwan. But just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's Friday episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribing is also a tremendous help for those who have not done so already. Indeed, about 41% of regular viewers, people who watch most episodes, are not subscribed. It's only 2 clicks of the mouse, but it's a tremendous help. It tells the algorithm to show these videos to new people. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep China Update financially sustainable. Thank you so much, everybody. Yesterday was 10/10 Day, the Republic of China, that is Taiwan's national day. It was anticipated that President Lai Ching-te would deliver a highly provocative speech to mark the day. In the end, most commentators concluded that it was relatively mild. Beijing, publicly at least, very much disagreed. A spokesperson for the Beijing-based Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council said that, quote, "Lai Ching-te continued to promote the new two-state theory of mutual non-subordination in his speech, fabricating Taiwan independence fallacies, propagating separatist claims, and inciting hostility and confrontation across the strait. This fully demonstrates that Lai Ching-te stubbornly adheres to the Taiwan independence position, is full of confrontational thinking, and constantly provokes and stirs up trouble, deliberately exacerbating cross-strait tensions and seriously undermining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait." End quote. A Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson made a similar statement, and of course state media on the mainland was very fiery in its coverage of Lai's speech. State-run The Global Times, for example, wrote today, quote, "Analysts said that Lai's speech, which repeatedly contrasted mainland China and Taiwan and did not reflect any notion of the One China principle, was extremely confrontational." Wang Yinjing, director of the Center for Cross-Strait Relations Studies at Renmin University of China, told The Global Times that Lai's speech is a further endorsement of his new two-state rhetoric, which is absurd and deceitful. From his speech, we can see that Lai remains unchanged in his separatist stance, confrontational attitude, and hostility toward the mainland. End quote. Zhu Songling, a professor at the Institute of Taiwan Studies at Beijing Union University, in a commentary in state-run China Daily in English, wrote today, quote, "In his speech, Lai Ching-te claimed that Taiwan holds important geopolitical responsibilities and emphasized Taiwan's willingness to contribute to regional peace and stability. However, geopolitical responsibilities are merely a cover-up for his plan to seek independence through external forces while resisting reunification. By emphasizing Taiwan's importance in the region, he wants to make the island's residents believe that Taiwan can find its place in the complex international environment under his leadership. In reality, this approach will only worsen the situation in the Taiwan Strait, leading to more instability and danger in cross-strait relations." End quote. So what did Lai actually say? Let us get a taste of his speech. Quote, "I want to thank generation after generation of fellow citizens for coming together and staying together through thick and thin. The Republic of China and the People's Republic of China are not subordinate to each other. On this land, democracy and freedom are growing and thriving. The People's Republic of China has no right to represent Taiwan. The 23 million people of Taiwan, now more than ever, must reach out our branches to embrace the future. My fellow citizens, we have overcome challenge after challenge. All along, the Republic of China has shown steadfast resolve, and all along, the people of Taiwan have shown unwavering tenacity. As President, my mission is to ensure that our nation endures and progresses, and to unite the 23 million people of Taiwan. I will also uphold the commitment to resist annexation or encroachment upon our sovereignty. Taiwan faces relentless challenges. Expanding authoritarianism is posing a host of challenges to the rules-based international order, threatening our hard-won free and democratic way of life. Regardless of what name we choose to call our nation, the Republic of China, Taiwan, or Republic of China, Taiwan, we must all share common convictions. Our determination to defend our national sovereignty remains unchanged. Our efforts to maintain the status quo of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait remains unchanged. Our commitment to hoping for parity and dignity and a healthy and orderly dialogue and exchanges between the two sides of the strait remains unchanged. Our determination, from one generation to the next, to protect our free and democratic way of life remains unchanged." End quote. Of course, Beijing isn't happy about hearing this, and it's going to be extra unhappy when Taiwan's ex-president, Tsai Ing-wen, visits Brussels next week to meet European Union lawmakers. The first time a former Taiwanese leader has travelled to the EU capital. Tsai, who stepped down earlier this year, had already confirmed a visit to Prague later this week. The Taiwanese government is keeping the rest of her trip low profile. Taiwanese media reported that she would also visit France. We will follow this trip next week. Meanwhile, yesterday, Thursday, China's foreign ministry announced it had imposed sanctions on 3 US military-linked firms and 10 senior executives over US weapons sales to Taiwan. The steps taken against the firms, including Edge Autonomy Operations, LLC, Huntington, Ingalls Industries Inc., and Skydio Inc., became effective on Thursday and will freeze any property within China, the foreign ministry said in a statement. The 10 executives listed are from the 3 listed companies, as well as Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman Corporation. Former U.S. Marine Corps Forces Pacific Commander Stephen Rudder was also on the list. It's unlikely that any of these individuals have any assets in China, nor any plans to travel there anytime soon. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Friday, have a wonderful and restful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.